Good morning, everyone. Life is about love, and love is about laying down our lives. If you come to pretty much any funeral homily that I am offering, that's the way that we start off the funeral homily. Life is about love, and love is about laying down our life. It has specific because this gospel that we just proclaimed is one of the most popular for funeral homilies. Let's take a brief respite and review from last week. Remember, last week we talked about how you and we don't have to wait. We looked at the first reading, how the Israelites were in the Babylonian exile. They had to wait 70 years to be freed. They were sinful. They did not respond to the prophet. And no matter how much Jeremiah prophesied, they would not listen. And so because of their sins, they were exiled to Babylonia. And so Babylonia they stayed until King Cyrus, really unfolded by the Lord's goodness, took over and released them. 70 years they had to wait. You and I say, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that the world would not be condemned, but that it would have life. And that's why he came. You and I can go and open our heart to the Lord in the sacrament of reconciliation and penance. You and we don't have to wait. All we have to do is exercise courage, humility, and open our heart in the way that God... None of us deserves heaven. He offers it freely. Let me say that again. None of us deserves heaven, and we don't earn it. You don't earn it, and I don't earn it. It is freely given to us in baptism. So baptism, now the gift of salvation is there. Now it's our responsibility to take that gift and unwrap it every single day. The reality is that in our human condition, sometimes we make mistakes. The smaller ones they get in the middle of our relationship with God, but they don't halt it. Some of the big ones, they stop it. Taking the Lord's name in vain, missing Mass, and many others. That can stop our relationship with God. The gift that he gives, and it's unfolded in John 21, he breathed on them and said, receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, whose sins you forgive are forgiven, whose sins you retain are retained. He gives us this gift so that we can go and open our hearts and that we can be freed. The Israelites, they had to wait 70 years. You and we don't have to wait. You know who does have to wait? He does. He has to wait on you and me to come to him and to open our hearts in the sacrament. So the invitation is there. Actually, St. Paul's this week, 6 p.m. Let me say it again. St. Paul's, 6 p.m., reconciliation and penance service. There'll be 3 priests there. So I'll be one of them. I'm sure Father Babu, who is there at St. Paul's, and I'm not sure who the 3rd priest will be. Great opportunity. There are also, you can come here at Thursday mornings. You can go to Sacred Heart on Thursday evenings. You can go to Saturday afternoon at Sacred Heart, and you can come here on Sunday afternoon and evening for the sacrament of reconciliation and penance. So there it is. Now, today, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. You have to hate your life in this world in order to save it. Now see, he's speaking in hyperbole here. He's getting your attention. I could see some of your heads, you kind of snapped when I said that. That's exactly what he was going for. He's not saying literally hate our life. He's saying you want to live, you really want to live. Then take possession of yourself, find the natural talents that he's given us, then seek further the spiritual gifts that he's given us, take possession of those, and then freely lay them down. A good sacrifice given will bring life in others and in ourselves. That's what he's saying. And ultimately, it comes down to, every single one of us will be right here. Either we'll be cremated or we'll be in a coffin. And we'll be right here. Life is about love. Love is about laying down our lives. It will come to the testimony, really, of others. It's interesting, when Pope John Paul II died, Pope St. John Paul II, when he died, 4 million people entered Rome to try and just get a glimpse of really just one of the big screens, or to be in St. Peter's Square, or even to be out beyond the piazza, just to be able to see, maybe even to catch a glimpse of his coffin with binoculars. 4 million people came physically to his funeral. It's kind of mind-blowing. 2 billion watched it on TV. The whole world stopped for his funeral. That will not happen for you and me. There won't be 2 billion people. Okay? Now, this isn't a shaming thing. This is just a reality of we won't be called to that type of witness. One of my favorite saints, St. Damien de Veuster, he was St. Damien of Molokai, or St. Damien of the lepers. He went to the island of Molokai, gave his life, laid down his life, and died there with the lepers. There was about 700 lepers there, throughout the time. Some would die, some would come in, about 700 there. And that happened for about 16 years. When he died, a saint, there's probably about 700 there at his funeral. For you and I, there will probably be less than 100 at our funeral. This is the point. Okay, we're not necessarily, it doesn't matter if there's 4 million, 700, or 3. Okay, when we die, what are they going to say? Now, I'm not talking about in church. In church, it's about Jesus Christ. The funeral homily is not about the person who died. It's about Jesus Christ and our hope in the resurrection. Okay, now the priest can personalize the homily. Okay, we can have a eulogy outside of the church, over at the funeral home, or at the gravesite, that type of thing. Okay, but I'm not talking about so much there as I am talking about before and after. I tell you, I can tell. So can the funeral directors. When I go and I say, "Tell me about Grandma," well, she was very nice. Oh, brother. She was so nice, and she would just do anything for you. Okay. What about this person, Uncle so-and-so? Oh, he was such a good guy. He was so good. He'd give the shirt off his back. Great. Is that really the love of God? Those are platitudes. It's that type of specific love that translates. Pope John Paul II, he was meeting a new bishop, and the bishop came in and he said, "Holy Father, it was just such a privilege to meet you for the first time." And he goes, "Actually, we've met before." And he goes, "No, Holy Father, I would have remembered if I would have met you before." And he goes, "No, really, we did." And he goes, "Well, no, Holy Father, you're wrong. Okay, I did not meet you before." And he goes, so they just continued the conversation, and then afterwards, the Pope talked to one of his bishop secretaries, explained the situation, and had them go. And the bishop went over to the new bishop, and he said, "Do you remember 25 years ago, you were going into the minor basilica of the Jesu in Rome, and you were with this person, your fellow seminarian, and you bumped into 2 cardinals, and you stopped and you had a little bit of an exchange there. Do you remember that? And he said, yes, I do remember that. And he said, one of those cardinals was Cardinal Wojtyla. And he remembered you. That brief interaction. You exchanged names. That type of death to self. I'm a cardinal. You're a little seminarian. That was not the Holy Father. That was not the Holy Father to be. The whole world stopped. This was a seminarian. An interaction that they had, a connection, another person. What are people going to say about you? Do we lay ourselves down? You know, I think about my grandfather. In high school, I was a gymnast, and I trained at a national training center, and we moved, and so I had to drive an hour and a half to practice every day. And I did that eventually when I was 16, but before then, my dear, dear mother had to figure out a way to get me there, and we carpooled. We carpooled with this one family that they definitely were a little bit more affluent. And sometimes my grandparents would take us. One time, that family took us, and we stopped, not a scheduled stop, but we stopped at a Church's Chicken. And we got in line, and I did not have any money. But they went ahead and they bought the chicken and stuff for the family, and they sat down and they ate their chicken, and I sat there and I pulled out my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I ate that in front of them, and they ate their big meal in front of me. And I didn't say anything or whatever, but I did say something to my grandparents. Because it really, at 15, it really irked me. And the next week, my grandparents took us. And where did we stop? Church's Chicken. All right, so we stopped at Church's Chicken, and we went in, and there it was, and I was just rubbing my hands, just saying, all right, let's see what you do, Pap. And the young man did have some money. And he pulled it out, and my grandfather put his hand on his and said, son, put it away. You're our guests. Even then, my grandparents, they grew up poor, and they didn't have a ton of money there. But that kid, didn't matter how he treated or his family treated their grandson. That kid was a guest, and they were treated like Christ. See, that preaches, how do you love? How do you love your family in a sacrificial way? How do you love your friends in a sacrificial way? How do you love the church in a sacrificial way? How is your relationship with Christ himself personally? See, there's the witness, and that's the gospel. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit.